This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade, it's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Welcome, everyone, to the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan, and together we'll embark on a weekly journey connecting with extraordinary hikers from all corners of the U.S. and beyond. As a warm embrace of summer envelops the Northern Hemisphere, we've had the privilege of conversing with remarkable individuals throughout this season. Their experiences and adventures will leave you yearning to hit the trails. And on today's episode with Rue McKenrick, creator and executive director of the American Perimeter Trail, a 14,000-plus mile trail that follows the perimeter of the continuous United States. You can follow him on Instagram at Rue McKenrick. During our chat with Rue, we learn about how his love for the outdoors as a child has catapulted him in exploring our beautiful country. Rue shares with us how after completing the Triple Crown of hiking, the seed for the American Perimeter Trail sprouted, and 10 years later, he's building a wonderful community across the country to help continue to grow the American Perimeter Trail Conference. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, Rue. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm excited to have Rue McKenrick here with us. He's a long-distance hiker and the executive director of the American Perimeter Trail. Thank you, Rue, for joining us on the podcast. I'm really excited to talk about your hiking experiences as well as all things American Perimeter Trail. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
You know, we always like to start off by asking our guests how they got started hiking and how long they've been hiking for.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I don't necessarily have an origin story. And I wrote a piece about this once, talking about how do you become a hiker or a backpacker. I'm still becoming one, even as we speak, so I don't feel like I've gotten there or that I intend to. But I write about, all these different influences, like, for instance, growing up by the Appalachian Trail, being able to be a trail angel when I turned 16 and could drive a car and pick up backpackers and take them to the post office or the store or back to the trail. This was at the midway point of the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania. So I talk about different influences and people I've met and experiences I've had in the woods and getting lost in the woods as a child and being able to seemingly cope with that. Okay. I guess I was told after that by some adults or, my parents even, that if it was any of the kids that were going to get lost in the woods, it was probably better that it was me because I'm a nature boy. Mm-hmm. But after citing all these different reasons of what maybe influenced or encouraged me to be a hiker, it's like at the end of it, I write, you know what? It was probably church camp. It was probably something real simple. But I did grow up just off the Appalachian Trail. I met hikers. I always wanted to talk with them about their experience. They influenced me, obviously. I started just hiking by myself and then some backpacking by myself. And I've been pretty solo over the years, not always even on purpose. But, I ended up deciding I knew I was going to thru hike the Appalachian Trail at some point in time in my life. I really didn't care if I was 20 or 50 or 70. I figured that would probably happen whenever the time came. And it happened 20 years ago when I was 23 years old. So that was the first long trail. I'd had outdoor experiences besides hiking and backpacking, like paddling and such, but this was the longest trail that I had hiked up until then. So I completed the trail that year, and it was such a beautiful experience for me, really life changing. And after that, I spent most of my 20s working like 2 or 3 seasonal jobs at a time in the off season and just trying to bank some money to try to get out on trail that summer. And some summers I could get away for a little bit, and other summers I'd be able to bank enough cash that I could get away for, 5 or 6 months. So that's kind of the beginning, the start of it. I always felt very comfortable in the outdoors, even in the dark, from the time I was a child, really. Walking through the dark in the woods without a flashlight when I was a kid, I remember that not unnerving me, but unnerving if I was with other people, like they would get very unnerved by that.
Mm.
And I'm an emotional person, so I'm not this Iceman that's just cool and doesn't have like any fear. I have fears, but it's all kind of relative, and fears come in different ways. That's one that I just really don't have. And
Mm.
so these expeditions have always been very adventurous and exciting, but also like not necessarily threatening, except for, there's times when it's been threatening. But in general, being by myself for long periods of time in the wilderness usually brings me a good amount of peace. And it has its limits. The length and the time has its limits. But that's a little bit about it. And that's the best way that I can explain it. I think if you don't have an origin story necessarily, like I do, that you can exactly point to, don't feel that you need to. What's important is how we move, how we grow today. That's what I look at.
No, that's so true, Rue. And everyone has their different progression through day hiking, backpacking, and through hiking. How was your progression from hiking and backpacking to then completing the AT in 2003?
I think one of the wildest trips I had taken before the AT was actually a paddling trip on the Delaware. And I very much enjoyed that. But I noticed when as a young man, like paddling, getting out of the canoe, and then people are at camp, and I'm the one that's like going up the mountain, and not necessarily on a trail or anything, but I'm just like going exploring. I want more. I'm like, I don't want to sit around camp. I want to go see more things and experience more things. And I come back to camp and it'd be like, hey, everyone, I found this waterfall. Like, come along, let's go look at it. And then the hiking and backpacking for me, I'm a day hiker, always have been. I don't know that I'll always be a backpacker, but the day hiking is when I'm not out backpacking, the day hiking is a regular part of my daily life. And for many reasons, there's many health benefits that we're aware of, but there's also psychological and spiritual connections that happen during that time. I do a lot of mine by myself. I hope that changes in the future, because I think it's also probably a good time to connect with people when you're walking and talking about the world, but you don't have to necessarily be in the world in that moment. And then just moving on to backpacking, I think that I was inspired by people who weren't necessarily backpackers. A lot of American novelists that I read, a lot of poetry that I read during that time kind of inspired me and gave me this romantic notion of what it's like to live for periods of time in the wilderness. And so, I was reading a lot of Thoreau and Emerson and John Muir. And then I started reading about backpackers in the 1960s and 1970s, like Colin Fletcher, and then more modern, like Ray Jardine and Beyond Backpacking. And that's where I started to make connections between these different worlds coalescing and what is simply just putting on a pack and walking through the woods. And these worlds were environmental or preservation, spiritual, intellectual, and educational. And also then the physical piece of moving one's body. And so I've started to feel like, well, this is a real package. And then I began making my own gear. So when I started backpacking, ultralight backpacking was just beginning. And it kind of started around a company called Go Light. It was one of the first ones who started making ultralight gear. And so at the beginning, I wasn't, I'm still not necessarily completely and would consider myself an ultralight or anything like that. I started backpacking more as a minimalist, which meant I just carried very little, just a tarp to rig or a hammock. And I carried very, very little with me. And I made all of my own gear, and I would end up through hiking with some of that gear. And then the ultralight thing started to come in. So the minimalist thing is like you carry less, you make do with less. And ultralight is like you carry everything, but it's lighter weight gear. Certainly, I've taken advantage of that over the years, and having gear sponsors. I wouldn't have been able to pay for this stuff for the APT. Gear sponsors provided a lot of that gear for me. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for this idea around ultralight backpacking. Most of the time on the APT, I didn't care how much I was carrying because I was just living out there. Resupplies during the pandemic became like once every week or once every 2 weeks. So I was always had so much weight. And then the heat dome that occurred, I was walking through that part of the country in Montana. And so I was carrying gallons, 2 to 3 gallons of water with me at a time. So I totally didn't even worry about weight anymore. It didn't matter. It was going to be heavy every day. And that's just the way it was going to be. But I'm very grateful for this idea around ultralight backpacking, because what I think it has done is been able to encourage people. They could have a physical disability, or they could just be a smaller framed person. They could weigh 100 pounds. I don't weigh 100 pounds, so I can carry more, but if I weighed 100 pounds, I'd probably be, I don't know. So this idea that people from different backgrounds, different habits, different sexes, different everything, it gives an opportunity. So that is part of the accessibility piece. It's not even necessarily just creating more trailheads or making more parking lots. Part of it is just giving people the ability and the resources to be able to go out there and move their body safely through these environments with, let's say, less injury.
I'm a big proponent for getting people out in the outdoors, especially if they have misconceptions of being out there or what hiking is. And, Rue, you've touched base on this. You have a passion for conservation and education. Is that something that came about through hiking the AT, or has that something that's been part of your life since a kid?
Yeah, well, as I stated, I'm a nature boy. So there's that. So I have an inclination, not really certain how that developed or why it developed, but it exists. And then, after hiking the Appalachian Trail, I got to do a bunch of really neat things. Like I was an AmeriCorps volunteer for a year with a group called Eco Watch. Then I worked for Outward Bound. I worked for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. They were the Appalachian Trail Conference at the time. And I worked for the Appalachian Mountain Club. And, I got to work doing conservation work or doing outdoor recreation or environmental education, got to write environmental education curriculum, got to teach in a school for a year, got to guide for a year, worked at a private school and a experiential ed program. All of these things happened after the Appalachian Trail that just, it just built experience. It was just like, I just built more experience and more knowledge and more understanding. And so my path began to unfold. At some point in time, something in my mind clicked and started heading in that direction. And I headed hard.
Rue, you are a triple crown of backpacking. You completed the triple crown of backpacking. When you were on the AT, did you have an inclination that you also wanted to take on the PCT or the Continental Divide Trail?
I would say not even once, but maybe once. I spoke with met a gentleman on the Appalachian Trail during the time that I was attempting to thru hike. And he had hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. And so I remember speaking with him that day. I hiked with him a little bit over the course of several days. And I remember thinking like, oh, that sounds like a cool experience. But I wasn't locked in. Honestly, at that time, there wasn't any social media. The world wasn't connected. You didn't necessarily know about other trails in other parts of the country. So different routes. It was just a non-digital kind of age and not connected in the way we are now. So I don't remember when I hiked the Triple Crown, anyone even conceiving of the Triple Crown until they found themselves upon it. In other words, I know now a lot of people are like, I'm going to go hike the Triple Crown. I don't even think that was a thing that happened back then, none being better than the other. I think if you asked Triple Crowners from 20 years ago, they would tell you they just started backpacking. then they backpacked a long trail. They had a good experience. So then they looked for something else to do. And then they did that one. And I mean, I can remember being on the Pacific Crest Trail was actually like someone was encouraging me to go with them. I feel like I was into it, but I feel like I could have maybe hiked the Appalachian Trail again that summer. But I definitely wanted to go. I mean, I felt like I had plenty of time. I was in my 20s. And so, but I remember being on the Pacific Crest Trail, and now I'm attempting to through hike that. And a gentleman that I had met on the Appalachian Trail lived in California. And he met me at a trailhead and picked me up. And I went and stayed in the cabin with him for a day or two just to rest up, clean up, and meet with a friend. And I remember him saying like, oh, well, you know, Rue, if you complete this, then you have to go do the Continental Divide Trail because you'll be a backpacking god. And he was like poking fun at me. But then also he kind of wasn't, because I think there was so few people at that point in time. But I completely blew him off. Like, you know, I was like, no, I don't have any interest in going to do that. And then sure enough, like not that long after, I'm finishing the Continental Divide Trail at Mexico. So it goes. So you don't always know the path. And I really, however anyone approaches it, there's no right or wrong way. Like, for instance, getting on a trail and being like, I will not get off this trail no matter what, come hell or high water. I will finish this trail. That's going to work for some people. And for some other people, it's like, you know what? I'm going to take it day by day and see what happens. And that works for some other people. And I've been both of those people on different trails, you know, so however it works for you, I just wish you the best of luck and, you know, really live it, get in there if you're going to do it. So,
Yeah, I like that, Rue. Everyone should hike their own hike. And, you know, like you said, some people need that driving force of like, I'm going to bear down and get this done. And for some people, that doesn't work for them. But, you know, for someone that's done the Triple Crown, what are some key differences that you noticed between the trails besides the landscape? Was there one that was more physically challenging or one that was more mentally or emotionally challenging than the rest?
You know, I wonder if I have anything new to bring to this conversation that hasn't already been stated. Often what you'll hear is like the Appalachian Trail is very physically demanding. However, it's easier because it's well marked and there's lots of people, so you don't have to worry about solo hiking. There's shelters and there's shorter resupplies. I'll go from the perspective of when I triple crowned, and maybe it's not even what I think today, but I'll say I felt like I did get beat up pretty good on the Appalachian Trail physically, but some of that was inexperience. I did have to use map and compass skills on the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide Trail, and I never felt that necessary on the Appalachian Trail. Not that it wouldn't be something good to learn and to have access to that in your toolbox, but I didn't feel that way. But then, like, you know, the Pacific Crest Trail, it seemed pretty necessary, and then especially for extensive snow travel. And I've noticed since then there's a lot more markers on the PCT now, I think, which is good. You know, it makes for ease of hiking, so you don't have to be focused on that. And the Continental Divide Trail, absolutely. When I hiked that, I think I met 12 backpackers that year. Every single one of them had excellent map and compass skills. I think that was necessary. And all of us got lost. You know, I mean, all of us. I'm talking with my friend Nimble Nomad the other day, and he's like, yeah, you know, when I was first time I came down through there in Montana, I ended up way over here, way off track. You know, I was like, I did the same thing the first time I came through there. Like, I did the exact same thing. So I would say that was different. Obviously, there's more people on the trails now than there was then. The trail, the AT and the PCT look very similar to what they were when I initially hiked them. The trail has changed, but not much. It's changed in some areas here and there. It changes every year. They move stuff around, but a lot of it is the same. And the people, I think, have changed in the sense that, like, 20 years ago, I was just running into like a lot of white guys, and they were either young, so like before they started a family, or they were older and had retired and now they could hike the trail, and there wasn't much in between. And so everything besides like a white male who's 20 and a white male that's 65, everything in between there that fills that space, all kinds of different people, that has changed, where the demographic has changed on the trails greatly. And this is what I wanted to say. So during the Triple Crown, I met 2 people from other countries, and I've been out on the Pacific Crest Trail, and I meet people from other countries every single day that I'm out there. I think that's great. So that's changed too. Universally, I think people have recognized that if you want to do distance backpacking, the United States is a great place to come to do that, because at this point, there isn't a tremendous amount of permitting. You can basically camp wherever you need to camp. You don't have to make reservations, and you can stay out there for really long periods of time, and other people have done it. So there's a lot of information about that. So no wonder people are coming here for distance backpacking. Like, no wonder.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate you bringing that up, Rue, because we recently had a guest, PCT Data, who's been compiling data from different PCT surveys and other agencies. And there has been a small growth each year with BIPOC hikers being on the PCT. And I think, in the next 10, 20 years, you'll see that continue to grow on the trail. So I'm glad that you, being on the trail frequently, have noticed that change from when you did it back in the early 2000s. When it comes to the American Perimeter Trail, how soon after did the seed for that idea kind of take place after you did the Continental to Divide Trail?
I had an inkling, if that's what I want to call it. I had a suspicion, I almost call it. When I was finishing the Triple Crown, I remember one day, soon before I finished, I'm in the desert, New Mexico, and sitting there thinking to myself, what in the hell am I doing here? And really, what am I doing here? What am I doing? And I'm like looking around, I'm like, okay, I'm a young man. I'm sitting here, gonna cook some dinner, I'm gonna eat. These are all good things. But what's driving you? What is turning you on about this anymore? And I was like, I don't know if this works for me anymore. I don't know if I want to spend time out here alone hiking around all the time. Like, why? What am I doing? What am I doing here? So I kind of had these larger questions, more existential questions. And I think it was within a year that I just conceived of the American Perimeter Trail. For me, it wasn't a process of, because I wouldn't actually end up starting the American Perimeter Trail for like 10 years after I first had this thought. So it's not like I was thinking, oh, what's bigger and better? Like, okay, I've done the Triple Crown, now what's next? It wasn't that really at all. It was an exploration of America. I had done a lot of soul searching for myself, so I wasn't necessarily trying to find myself. I had spent a lot of time traveling in other countries, and I was just getting to know my own country. And I thought this would be an interesting way of doing it because I appreciated the foot travel. I also, like, in the same moment had the same thought of, like, if you attempt to do that, I know you're not going to be successful, because I know myself well enough to know that I am compelled to action in a way that I feel this attraction towards being part of something bigger than myself. And I have, since it's part of my personality. It's not like it's not merit, and it's not moral. It's just like this compulsion. Really. let's call it what it is. So I don't want to put this fancy spin on it. So I knew in the same moment that if I just tried to go do this thing for the sake of going to do it, that I would make it, who knows, maybe 5,000 miles or so, and I'd run out of gas. And what I mean by running out of gas is, just like why? The existential reason why. Why am I here? I knew I was going to continue to run into that wall after I had that first moment finishing the Triple Crown. That was here to stay. So I knew right away that this was going to have to be more of my life's work, and that I could go hike this, and that would be an amazing personal experience. But if I shared it and I created a nonprofit that was actually going to build the trail, that this could actually be a more holistic way of living, more a way of being honest and living my own truth. Because I think just backpacking the APT around the country for the sake of doing that, I think would have been fragmented and partial. And so this brought a more holistic representation of my values, or what I feel is important. and how I spend my time, my very finite time that I have here on this planet.
For our listeners who've heard of the APT but don't necessarily know about the 12,000 mile trail that you're trying to build, what would you say is the vision for the American Perimeter Trail Conference?
Yeah, and you can read all of this on our website at americanperimetertrail.org. But instead of just reading it to you, I'll tell you like the vision from my mind. And also, we have an interactive map that's up there now, and people are actually using that to backpack in real time right now, which we're very pleased about. I don't know what the mileage is at this point. I backpacked 14,000 by the time I got Florida in there. And, I thought I was finished in October of this past year, and it turned out I wasn't. So I ended up back out. The mileage we have on the map at this point is, I don't know, maybe it's 15,000 plus probably at this point. So, and some of that's going to fall off, and some things will be added and some things will be taken away. So we just try to hover around 14. It's an estimate by any of us because it's a process. But the mission and vision from the beginning for me, and what I brought to the conference when I created it, was from a conservationist perspective. And so what that means is my main goal is to create a conservation corridor for flora and fauna and for recreation that roughly traces the perimeter of the contiguous United States. And the way that I seek to achieve that is by putting a recreational trail right in the middle of it. So I didn't come up with this concept. The Appalachian Trail Conference, as they were initially called, and they changed their name to the Conservancy because they do not see themselves as a recreational hiking or backpacking organization. And if you look at the way that our nonprofits are filed, like the American Perimeter Trail Conference is filed, we're filed as a conservation organization. So though we encourage hiking and backpacking and recreation, the goal behind that is actually to preserve lands because of their intrinsic value, their beauty, the cultural value, the educational piece. I mean, I could go on and on and on and list why it's important to have these in our country, and we have several. But also part of the method is giving human beings access to that. So, I mean, there isn't any education if you're absolutely a purist about this mentality of like, do not touch anything, then you also don't have access either, and people aren't going to experience it. I'm not saying there's not a place for that. Like even wilderness areas, they're roadless and they don't use mechanized machines in the wilderness, but there's still access, like there's trails for people to go in to experience. So I have found that people care about what they use in their daily lives or something that's been memories that they've built and a place that they can go that's always kind of home. We see this with organizations around fishing, where fishermen look after fisheries, and maybe they don't care about the benthic macroinvertebrate health of a stream, but they do if they're fishing, because if that's not healthy and there's a problem with the stream, there's no fish. And the same with hunting organizations. We'll see them very much involved in preservation of different lands. And maybe they don't care. Maybe they think that whole forest should be cut down and we need the wood, right? But if there's no animals there to hunt, then they have a problem, right? And I'm not saying that's everyone's mindset, but I'm playing off of this human piece of wanting to be involved and engaged in something. And when we do that, we tend to take ownership. And so the conservation corridor, the trail is a means to the conservation corridor. And I haven't come up with something that would be as beneficial for everyone involved. And so the other thing with the American Perimeter Trail is looking to making cities and towns in which it passes by or passes through more walkable and safer. Really, I unfortunately have had some tragedies in the last couple of years with backpackers and with walkers, and deaths and people being seriously injured. So that's part of it. And then also just the metaphoric and physical connectivity of what appears to be a divided nation. And that was something that definitely disturbed me while I was hiking the American Perimeter Trail, what I was hearing people that were reporting to me from the front country about what was going on in our country during that time. And it feels good to be part of something that's positive. I mean, our membership for the organization are people from all different backgrounds, ideas, religions, political beliefs. And it seems like there's room at the table for everyone there. And it seems like people are able, when they find something that they can rally around, the separations and divisions between us kind of fall off because they're not as important as like this thing at hand, this mission at hand, or this purpose at hand. And so we see that in our organization and our membership. And then you made reference to that as well about statistically how demographics of recreationalists and outdoors people, how that is changing maybe from a status quo to more reflective of the society at large.
The research that I did for this episode, you could definitely tell that the community that you're building with this conference is really inclusive, and it's bringing people from all walks of life to help with this mission and vision. When it came to start researching and mapping out the trek, and thank you for bringing up the map, because the interactive map that you guys have on your website is amazing, and we'll be sure to link the website and the map on the episode show notes. But looking at it, I was wondering, as a Triple Crown backpacker, did you start off with the PCT and AT on the map and then saw what routes were available to connect those two?
No. I left Bend, Oregon with $400 in my pocket and gear that was over 125 years old if you added it up. You know, it was all sewn and stitched back together. It was in bad shape. I could show you some pictures. And a dream and a mission and a vision. And my goal was to see if I could find other people along the way that had the same idea in mind or could make the idea their own in their own way. And it happened. But I always looked at this as an explorative scouting mission for the American Perimeter Trail Conference. And so I was not dedicated to any route specifically. And that served me well because there are things that happened in this piece of history, in this time in history, that absolutely formed the route. Now, I've adapted, I've gone back, I've hiked areas I didn't hike, I've re-hiked areas, and I've readapted to the route where I think it should be right now. That's going to change every month. I could go to the map and change it right now because things are developing very quickly for us. That's good news for everyone involved. I remember like someone in Bend, Oregon was involved with this nonprofit, and we thought maybe we could help them raise some money for the work that they were doing with adaptive athletes. And so a person from their staff was like, okay, I'll throw this website together real quick so you can start a pathway to the nonprofit. And so they put this website together. I'm eternally grateful. But they sent me a text message that was like, hey, we need to put a map on here. And I scribbled something on a napkin, took a photo shot, and sent it to them. And then they put up a contiguous US map with a line drawn around it. And like the lines were like all straight because like, you know, trail lines are not straight. They go, you know, trails go all over the place because they follow the geography. And so so it was like all these straight lines and stuff. So that was just a way to imprint upon people of like, this is the basic concept and idea. But I didn't start on the Pacific Crest Trail, but close to it because I live in Bend, Oregon, which is a PCT trail town. And then I continued on the PCT. I didn't know how much of the PCT I would include in the American Perimeter Trail. It was the American Perimeter Trail Project at that point in time. And then as far as the Appalachian Trail, I had no idea really what I was going to do when I got to the east. It's difficult because the people who are resupplying me are engaging with me or trying to schedule interviews or whatever. I'm changing my route sometimes day to day. So they're sending packages to places I'm not even going because I just decided like, no, it shouldn't go there. It should go here. And so I would just change my mind. And then I'd try to, if I had phone service, try to get a hold of them before they sent stuff or an interview or whatever. A lot of times I didn't. And I'd be like, I'm not going there. And so people who worked with me through this, they got used to that. So they forgave me for all of that. But it really was from day to day, especially when I got to the Appalachians, I had a bunch of paper maps and I would sit in my tent at night and I would do my homework and I called it my homework. And every night I had homework. And that was basically, I'd lay out these maps and I would start trying to piece together in my mind what the next day was going to look like, or maybe what the next week looked like. And I did the best I could with it. So, no, I didn't know. When I got to the Appalachian Trail, when I was approaching the Appalachians, I hadn't seen another backpacker since, I'm in Alabama at this point, and I'm not quite to Alabama, and I hadn't seen another backpacker since California, and I'd just been by myself every single day. So I was thinking I'll hop on the Appalachian Trail for like a week, because my whole kind of hang up there was that it wasn't informative for the long-term conservation project, because first of all, it's already has its own corridor. And second of all, I have 4,000 to 5,000 miles on the Appalachian Trail besides the thru hike. So it wasn't informative for me because I know the landscape. I know the system. For me, it was more interesting to go somewhere else where people haven't gone and see if that was in areas that are not in a conservation corridor, and see if that could be brought into, it fit better as part of the mission and the vision. But from a selfish perspective, I was like, I think I'll hop on the AT just for like a week or so to be around people. I think it'd be good for my mental and emotional health to do that at this juncture. And that's when the pandemic hit. And so then I never stepped on the Appalachian Trail during the APT. I ended up making my own route and then using some other suggested routes up the eastern seaboard through the Appalachians. So even if I had from the get-go decided I was going to use the Appalachian Trail to go up to the eastern seaboard, the thing is, if you were a recreationalist and you wanted to go out there and distance hike on the Appalachian Trail, you could make a decision, a personal decision, besides areas where they were like actually stopping people at trailheads and turning them around. You could make decisions for yourself like, I feel comfortable with this, or I don't feel comfortable with this, or I feel like this is safe, or I don't feel like this is safe for others. You could make that personal judgment. And some people were in the midst of a thru hike, that had given up their apartments or their homes or their husband or their wife. They'd left their husband or their wife. They'd left their jobs. Yeah. And now here they're just very short into their trip, or maybe they've made it hundreds of miles and they're being told like to leave the trail. And they're not supposed to be back for another 4 months or what have you. So it put those people in a very compromising situation. And many of those folks decided to go home, and some of the folks decided to stay on. For me, I was being supported by contributions, individual contributions, and then gear-wise from different companies to keep me going on this journey of the American Perimeter Trail. And for that reason, when the Appalachian Trail Conservancy asked for all distance backpackers to leave the trail, if I had stepped on the Appalachian Trail, I imagine that would have been the end of my trip. So just taking the whole judgment call out of it, I didn't even really have to, because like I said, if I'd stepped on the Appalachian Trail, I think it would have been over for me. So I had to come up with a methodology around backpacking in severe isolation, and I would follow that for months. And what that meant was I only ate out of resupply boxes that were shipped or dropped for me. I didn't go into towns. So if I had to go to a post office, I used one that was, there's standalone post offices all over the country that aren't connected to towns. They're just kind of out there. And I didn't catch rides. I didn't stay with trail angels. It was a difficult time, but I used that process in order to continue on with the work that I was doing. And it worked. It ended up working. Like, people were satisfied when I explained, laid out the entire methodology and how this was going to happen for months and months and months until there was change. And of course, we didn't know at the time. I had a gear sponsor contact me and was like, the backpackers are eating their young. And I didn't know, I had no idea what that meant. What I would come to realize is that meant that, I guess, on social media, people had decided to stay on trail and people had decided to leave trail, and those groups were like having it out. I didn't witness any of that. Like, I wasn't privy to any of that. I couldn't even charge my electronic devices. So I don't know what was going on in the world half the time. But, they told me they had a contract with me, and they broke their contract. I mean, they were just basically like, give it a week or 2 or 3, this will blow over. And then, of course, we know the rest of the story. So as far as mapping it out, I had some ideas. I don't want to say that it was completely impromptu. That's not true. But I was open. Let me put it this way. I was open to changing and just being flexible. I think flexibility was my greatest asset as far as being able to do something like the APT. And so it drastically changed my route. There were some areas that were having outbreaks and I simply could not go to and be able to do this in a way that would have been ethically supported by those who were supporting the mission.
Thank you, Rue, for that insight, because it is something that I did notice. The map, whether it was gradual changes or big updates, was constantly changing throughout the time that you were on the route and after you completed it, especially that last leg in October of 2023. Was there big changes that you saw, like after, the initial scouting trip, that you kind of went back to the map and said, maybe I need to do this section again and find an alternative route?
I did. I'll just point out one. It was probably the first biggest one. And let me say this. So we're like sharing footbed with some national scenic trails. We don't have that designation, and we're grateful for that. But ultimately, because of our mission and vision, it's not just to trace a line on existing trails. We're actually building new trails. And so we have trail projects coming up. We're going to be making all that public this summer about where these projects are at. They're being negotiated. I mean, I will mention a big project in Louisiana and also in Connecticut for new trail. That will be the American Perimeter Trail. It brings more land into preservation and it creates more opportunities for recreationalists. So, I mean, it's great to want to be inclusive and bring everyone out into the woods. But if you live in an area, which I do, that you have seen your favorite trail, that the experience has changed because maybe there's no parking anymore, or maybe it's just so overused. There's damage or there's garbage, or there's just like the experience has changed because it's not a lonely walk in the woods. It's more stacked, I guess I would say. But one example I'll give you is I knew while I was walking through Death Valley that wasn't going to work. I knew why I was doing it. While I was doing it, I was like, I'm getting lucky. I created a through hike through Death Valley. I never thought I was going through Death Valley when I left Bend, Oregon. That wasn't part of the plan. I got down to Southern California and I was like, what if I go up to Death Valley and then walk over the Grand Canyon? I've never been to the Grand Canyon, so why don't I go do that? Heck, why not? And so I went and did that, and that was a bad idea. And I haven't published that route. If that's something that you want to go do on your own, that's fine, but I'm not going to be responsible because, I mean, honestly, I got lucky. I got pretty lucky. It was a very dangerous hike. Just the cross country, the amount of navigation, the terrain, and then, of course, water. Just not having water for long stretches of time is a bad idea. So that was one I knew right away. And then what I did was I went back there and I walked through Southern California. I went back there while I was still hiking in the APT. I went back to Southern California and started coming up with a route. And we've put 2 routes leaving Southern California, head over towards Arizona on the interactive map. And so we'll see if one stands out from the other or if we leave both of them. The mapping is going to become available on your favorite apps this summer. So you will be able to use an app to hike the American Perimeter Trail if you choose. We don't necessarily benefit from that. Like, that's a service we're doing as part of the conference and our work. We don't make money off of that. So you'll be able to see that, but we're also going to put it on some forums where people can start giving feedback about the route. There's 1,000 ideas about where this should go or where it should be. And I want to hear all of those. I want to make the best trail. It's not, here's my thoughts. I hiked it. I've put it out there. And now we get to spend I get to spend the rest of my lifetime like cutting and pasting this thing. Yeah. And that's the fun. Like, that's the real fun part of this experience. And that's why I think we've had so much interest in places like Texas that doesn't have a 1,000-mile trail, even though they have a huge landmass. We have a lot of engagement there because they want to build the Texas Trail, they want to build the APT Texas Trail. And that's why we have like membership from a bunch of different communities, because it's not just like supporting something, like giving money to kind of keep the machine oiled. It's actually building the machine. And the creative piece of that is real exciting.
I can only imagine once you start getting additional data, additional feedback from people on the trail, how it's going to shape and morph what you've already started. And I think that's an exciting part of this conference and the trail itself. Rue, for folks that are interested in helping out or volunteering and supporting the APT, what are some opportunities that folks have?
So we have a volunteer form that you can fill out on our website. I'll try to get back to you in as timely a matter as I can, or someone from the conference will. And I'd recommend to updating all the regions and states sometime beginning today. The material is already there, it just needs to go live on the website. So I'd recommend, if you live in one of those areas, check it out, see what work we're doing there and who we're partnering with. So that's a good way to start. Even if you decide you don't want to join us, but let's say, for instance, we're sharing a footbed with an organization around where you live, or you want to volunteer for them. We're not competitive. We're very much collaborative. And our experience has been with the other conservation and trail groups in this country has been the same, that people are very collaborative. Now, everyone's like trying to get the same funding. Everyone's trying to get the same dollars. But I think if you have a good, let's call it a product, I think if you have something to offer for people, then that speaks for itself. So I would suggest that, or fill out the volunteer form, check out the regions in the states. And if you'd like to become a member, we created our own social media for the website and for the community, where you can load your picture and your profile and then see other states and where people are. So you can start connecting with people around the country as a member and see where the other members are. I think we've had a couple APT relationships, like connections. Well, I know we have.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've had our first APT baby, but I see it coming in the future. I tried to make that as easy as possible. I wanted to figure out a way to sponsor membership, and we haven't quite figured that one out yet. So you can make contributions there, or you can become a member, and it's $35. And if you don't have $35 in your pocket, trust me, I understand. The APT, if you have the notion that I'm some rich guy that just walks around the country, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But what we did is you can give $6 every 2 months, if that seems to kind of fit your budget and your cash flow. And so those are really great ways to support us. There's so much that can be done on different levels. Everyone has different skills and talents. We have social media on Instagram and Facebook for the American Perimeter Trail Conference. And so when we post stuff there, if you want to share it, that would do us a world of good. I mean, if everyone who enjoys the events and the information that we're bringing and the projects that we're working on and the people that check out our stuff online, if everyone shared it and encouraged other people to share, we could really spread this mission and this idea like wildfire, which is what we hope to do. It's going to take many hands. So those are some ways that people can be involved and contribute to this.
We've said it, but we'll make sure to put the links in the episode show notes so people can see what's available and see how they can support the APT and build that community that you're building across the country. You've kind of touched base on it, Rue, but for you and the APT, what are some of the goals that you can share for the remainder of 2023 that you personally have as a hiker, and what the APT has in store?
So for me personally, as a hiker, I'm honestly deeper in than I expected in 2023, deeper than I probably even really want to be. So that's going to be ending, well, I'm hoping. Anyways, I'm already over 2,000 miles backpacking into 2023. And this was a year that I was planning on not really backpacking that much. But I got the opportunity. Outdoor Vitals paid for our conservation expedition and backpacking through Florida, is bringing that in online as part of the EPT. So happy to be part of that and have that opportunity present itself. And then I've had some media opportunities that's got me out traveling. And then I took a little bit of time just backpacking without any interviews or really sharing anything, just for myself, because a lot of times I'm backpacking and working at the same time. And so it was nice to kind of let that go for a little bit. So me personally in 2023, I see probably a lot of travel, but I don't intend to backpack another 2,000 miles this year. Crazier things have happened. And we'll take opportunities for the conference where they come. But I do see personally a lot of travel for me. I've been traveling for 4 years. I was home in Bend, Oregon in the first week in October for 48 hours, and I haven't been back since. So,
oh, wow.
And so I see a lot of traveling for me. There's opportunities. Again, some of the stuff I can't talk about in specifics, we will be bringing it all. It looks like I'm being offered this tour to go around the nation and follow the perimeter back around, where I can do more scouting, but also have speaking engagements to share the work of the conference and encourage membership and conservation areas that I haven't yet identified. So that personally, that's probably what is going to be happening for me, I continue to work on the organization, and we came to a place where I've wanted to just keep it tight and small because I was doing a lot of traveling and was working specifically on some projects. And I mean, I'm not even always in the front country where I even have access to being connected, like just simple phone service or Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So that makes it difficult to answer emails. So I'm going to be spending a good part of the summer working on some of the organizational pieces and bringing on the talent and professionals that are required for such, amazing, but just huge project and journey. And so I see for the organization, us putting in firmer pieces around that. And of course, it's really exciting that we just got the map up, and also that the mapping project, it probably looks like just drawing a line on a map, but to create that and to get it onto a website and now to have it in the app development phase, it takes a lawyer, it takes a scout, it takes organization, it takes funding, it takes 2 web designers, it takes 2 app designers these people are from different countries even. It takes like an evil genius. It takes and that's not me. That's not me. It takes a lot of resources in order to do that. Oh, and then coding. Like I don't do coding. Yeah. So I've had to have people come in that have done all the coding for the GPX files. And, I'd like to say thank you to Tim McGrath, who has been volunteering, who's a geographer that's volunteered a lot of his time and found us a lot of interesting partners to work with in creating all this. So it's a tremendous amount of resources that get put into something like this. It's been an interesting process. I mean, it's my first time going through something like this. So that's very exciting that it's live on the website and that it's coming onto the apps. And we're also looking to use outsourced mapping. So that means that weekly, there'll be people out there giving input that it's going to be getting update very quickly. So these things are all great for the organization. And so I just think that the membership is growing, the interest is growing, but organizational wise, I have some work to do around those pieces so that we can start bringing on staff. So that's what's next.
I'm excited to see, what the second half of 2023 has for the APT and just you growing that community. Rue, that was it for the regular questions. This last section is one of my favorite parts of the podcast, is the this or that questions. I'm going to give you 2 hiking related topics and you just choose the one that you prefer out of the 2.
Okay. This is just preference.
Yeah, just preference.
Okay.
First one is, do you prefer ascending or descending?
Oh, ascending.
And then waterfalls or summits?
Waterfalls.
Yeah, they get harder, some of them, as they go.
And I want to explain each one, I'm like,
Oh, feel free to too.
Oh.
Switchbacks or straight up?
Switchbacks. It's better for the land. So
okay.
Yeah.
And then this one is a little divisive, but trek poles or freehand?
Oh, it depends on trail, but yeah, use trekking poles. Yeah. I did both on the APT. It just depends.
And then this one's a new one, but trail runners or hiking boots?
Oh, both. Yeah, whatever you need to use. Yeah, have at it. I use trail runners most of the time. Okay. I've used the same pair of New Balance for 20 some years. They're $32 online. So
wow.
So have at it.
Okay. And then for your day hikes, Rue, do you prefer loop trails or out and back trails?
So I'm going to say most of my day hikes have been out and back. Hell, the American Perimeter Trail, loop it up.
And, you've come across some beautiful bodies of water on all your hikes. So when you do have an opportunity, do you jump in or do you stay dry?
I'm probably going to say usually stay dry. Yeah. I feel like, why do I feel bad about that one? Like I'm supposed to jump in or something. And sometimes I just don't want to jump in. But,
sometimes it could just be like a toe or your feet.
Yeah. Or sometimes it's like the Great Lakes region. It's like, not today because I'm going to be following this for a week. So tomorrow.
So the next one is a hard one, but sunsets or sunrises?
Sunsets. The awakening moment is beautiful. And I love to go on runs and hikes first thing in the morning because of the bird song. But sunset is, the morning's awakening and the sunset is reflection.
And you've experienced this next one, both where you grew up and now in Bend, Oregon. But do you prefer spring flowers or fall colors?
Oh, yeah. It depends on where you're at, right? Oh, man. Whoa. Why? Why, Ivan? Why? Let's go with seeing a lot of flowers right now. So let's go with spring flowers.
And then this last one, Rue, is probably the most decisive one. But when it does come to social media, do you tag a hike or do you not tag a hike?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, do whatever works for you. I don't have any judgment. You'll have to make your own decisions. I'll add something to that though. But we never geotag anything I do. I'm not threatened, but we've had people show up at Trailheads to meet me, which is fine. But we've had a couple people like show up and they thought they were backpacking with me for the week.
Oh,
and
okay.
It's a trail. Anyone can be out there, but like I get to a trailhead and there's someone there with their gear and they've maybe never backpacked before. I'm doing 32 miles a day and they're like, hey, I'm here to backpack with you this week. And I'm like, no, like, wait, what happened? What happened here?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love like meeting people. I'm not afraid of strangers or anything like that. Just like with the conference, we've had a couple of strange interactions. So like usually the social media and stuff is not exact location, but there's special places. I'll tell you this, there's special places out there that I am not going to share. People know them, they can find them. And like, I'm not making a moral value judgment there in which like I'm protecting this place. It's just like, I don't know. We all have our own personal places. I have personal places in the woods that are not on trails that don't mean anything to anyone except for me. They intrinsically, or like just the aesthetic of it is not more beautiful or interesting than anything around it. It's just like I had a certain time there at a certain time in my life, a certain moment there. I met someone, something happened on that day. I had a realization, I had a good meal, whatever it is. So those places exist too.
Thank you so much for answering those questions. For folks that are interested in following the APT online, what are some of the places they can follow you on social media or the websites one more time?
So you can see us on Instagram or Facebook at American Perimeter Trail. And my personal is just Rue McKenrick. Anywhere I go, I just use my name. So you can find that. Then our website is americanperimetertrail.org. And that's where you can go for news, events, everything happening with the trail, and also sign up for membership. And that's pretty much where you'll find us.
And we'll be sure to add those to the episode show notes. The one last question, Rue, and this one's personal for me. I'm getting ready to do my first backpacking trip in the North Cascades. I've been a day hiker, but this is going to be my first backpacking trip. What advice or tips would you have for me?
Don't take yourself so seriously. And also just be kind to yourself. Any learning process is a learning process. I'm one of those people who thinks that like I've never done something before and I think, well, I should be good at this already. Or like I'm around other people that have done something and I feel like, well, I start comparing like, well, I should be as good as they are, but they've had the experience of that. So don't take yourself so seriously. Be kind to yourself and don't judge yourself based on what others are doing. There's always a way to compare. And I would say probably like along the gear lines, like challenge yourself to not take something that you think that you have to take. And I'm not talking about like safety items. That's not what I mean. But maybe if you're out for a week and you're like, I got 3 shirts, maybe you just need to take 2. Just try it out. See what it's like. You don't have to bring the front country to the back country. It can be a totally different thing for you. So I hope some of that's helpful.
No, it is, Rue. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It was really great talking to you. And like I said, I look forward to seeing what 2023 and beyond has for the American Perimeter Trail Conference.
Thank you so very much for having me today.
And that brings us to the end of this episode alongside Rue. We extend a heartfelt thanks to him for coming on the podcast. Make sure to stay connected and follow his adventures on Instagram at Rue McKenrick. And don't forget to check out the episode show notes for all the American Perimeter Trail links discussed in today's episode. We have an incredible lineup of episodes planned throughout the summer, and we can't wait to share them with you. New episodes will be dropping every Monday, with occasional bonus episodes on Fridays. To ensure you never miss out on any thrilling tales, remember to hit the like and subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to join our vibrant community on Instagram at Hikes and Mics. We'll be sharing episode visuals, my own personal hiking content, and so much more. Let's stay connected and continue to inspire each other on this remarkable journey. As we bid farewell, remember to tread those happy trails, embrace the great outdoors, and keep the spirit of adventure alive. Until next time, my fellow explorers, happy hiking. A special shout out goes to our incredible audio editor, Alex, whose exceptional skills and dedication help bring each and every episode to life week after week. Thank you, Alex, for your invaluable contribution to the Hikes and Mikes podcast. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Flip Socks. Whether you're on the trail, on the job, or in the yard, Flip Socks will keep Mother Nature out of your boots with their innovative nylon sleeve. You no longer need to worry about any annoying debris getting trapped in your boots during your hikes. Simply flip down the nylon sleeve over any boot to prevent Mother Nature from finding its way inside, keeping your feet comfortable all day long. To get your first pair, visit flipsockswithaz.com and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for listeners who use the promo code at checkout, I'll be donating 100% of the Season 2 promo code proceeds to Big City Mountaineers, who provide transformative experiences through connections to nature that strengthen life skills and build community for youth and disinvested communities across the nation. So if you're tired of bits and pieces of the trail finding its way into your hiking boots, pick up a pair of Flip Socks today with the promo code HikesMikes10 to get 10% off. For website and promo code, see the episode description.